Welcome to the Trill NBA Show. I'm your host, Felicia and Rose, a Nuha, aka the Trillest NBA you will ever know. And I'm here to help you survive and thrive in corporate America by giving you the truth and being as real as only I can be. Happy Sunday, guys. Welcome back to the show. Oh my God, if you can't tell in my voice, like I am so geeked and excited because I have a very special guest on the show today. She is a corporate baddie. Y'all, when I tell y'all, first of all, y'all, if y'all pay attention to this show and y'all really listen to me, I have talked about her several times on the show. I have been mentioning her name. She is one of the baddest marketers I know out here, killing the game. She has over 20 years of experience across various industries. Breana Brown Jones is an accomplished brand strategist and marketing professional whose career is a story in 3 chapters, baby. Listen, first, she worked on maintaining brands. Second, she worked on repairing brands. And third, she worked on building brands. She is a brand guru, okay? She's worked for a wide range of companies from Fortune 100 to Series A startups in a variety of industries, including food and beverage, FMCG, which is fast moving consumer goods, hospitality, and fintech. So she all over these industries, okay? As Breana has fine-tuned her marketing expertise in these companies, she has concurrently built a reputation as a trusted and recognized thought leader throughout the organizations that she has contributed to. She is known for her focus, discipline, candor, and authenticity, which is my favorite thing. One of her favorite activities is developing the leadership pipeline, both inside and outside organizations. Fix that, Chris. Both inside and outside of organizations. A Stanford alumna who earned her MBA at the University of Virginia's Darden Graduate School of Business, Breana is a constant learner and a voracious reader who enjoys traveling with her husband and 2 children, never one to shy away from a challenge. In addition to working in the corporate space, Breana is a consultant for small businesses. She definitely consults for Fair World Corp. And not only that, she is the best manager I've ever had in my 18 plus career working. That includes before grad school and after grad school. Basically, I finally got Breana Brown Jones on the show. Welcome to the show, Breana.
Ma'am, thank you so much for having me. And can I get a copy of that? Because I feel like I just want to attach that audio to my resume and my LinkedIn profile.
Oh, we got you. Chris, make sure you make a clip of that. Listen, we have been planning this. I am so excited. I know we're supposed to talk about objectives, and we are, but before we get into that, Breana, I just have to tell you, I have to give you your flowers now.
You weren't supposed to do that.
I have to, because you inspire me. You're one of the sharpest and smartest people I know. Like, if anybody called me and said, who should I hire for my CMO? You would be the first person I would say. I was like, if you need somebody who is going to make you money, you need to hire Breana. Like, she has a quick, smart mind. She is a true problem solver. She is the consummate professional. She is a people leader. She's a great people leader. And it's so funny because, you know, when we worked together, you were coaching me on being a people leader. And I'm going to tell you right now, I learned more about people leadership in the year and a half, almost 2 years we worked together. Yeah. Than I had learned in the previous 15 years of my career, you know, managing teams and managing cross-functional teams. And what the best thing I learned from you, and this is something that's important when you think about setting objectives for your team or helping your team set objectives, is that you have to manage people where they are, and not necessarily from a perspective of the type of manager you want to be for people. You have to meet them where they are. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned, that I will carry with me throughout the rest of my time working, be it in corporations or organizations or doing my own thing. I don't know. We taking life one day at a time. And so, my first question to you is, when you think about your career, how have how have you evolved your thought process around setting objectives?
Um, well, one of the things that we always talk about, my favorite word, well, one of my favorite words,
Right.
is why. And it's why am I setting this objective? And I think I've finally gotten to a point in my career where I realized the importance of setting the objectives. So earlier on my career, it was one of those things where it's that time of year, I just got to get something down on paper.
Mhm.
Doesn't really matter. Actually, many times I got frustrated because I would think to my and say to my manager even, you know what you want me to do. You know what is required to get this promotion. Why don't you just tell me where
Yeah.
I need to be? And then after several cycles of just not understanding, not hitting the objectives, or busting my butt to hit an objective and then still not getting what I needed out of it, I
Right.
realized I needed to take the leadership. And rather than looking at an objective of something I had to do, it's something that I needed to do.
Right.
And so, who better to guide that process than me?
Yeah.
So
And
that was
that
that thought process is what really changed it.
Yeah, and that's another thing I learned from you, because we were working in an environment with high levels of ambiguity, right?
Yes,
Like there was
absolutely.
a lot of change. And this is most organizations though, right? Like it's not anything particularly specific to where we worked, but when you have a lot of change and you have new leadership and new strategy and new this and new that, it can kind of be hard to navigate. And one thing I think you drove for me was, continuing to drive for clarity in that way. And I want you to talk about some of the a little bit of the ups and downs, and this doesn't not this includes like where we worked, but like in your career, of balancing as a people leader your individual goals and the company goals, and then how you led objective setting.
So again, I think it's a process. It's an evolution. So when I was early in my career, I did not think of myself as a leader. I thought of myself as a manager. And again, I think that is something I tell people there are three types of people in the workplace. There are managers, there are visionaries, and there are leaders. And they are three very different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so early on, when I was just managing projects or even managing people, I was looking to my manager to set the tone. I was looking to senior leadership to set the tone. I had that belief that they knew more about things than I did, so I should follow their direction. At some point, I realized they didn't always. Because I'm gonna put you all onto a little secret. Your manager hates writing your objectives as much as you hate writing your objective.
Yes.
It was the bane of my like the hardest part about being a people manager is the people. And making sure that you are guiding them and helping them. And so, it was beneficial when I took that leadership role because one, I was able to get out what I needed, but then I started to notice that my supervisors appreciated that initiative as well. They appreciated that I was showing leadership by taking it on. And of course, it gave me the ability to massage and manage and do what I needed to do for me. And because I knew what the objectives were for the company, it was easy for me to align them so that I was getting the why in addition to the what.
Right. And so, one thing I want people to take away is that objectives aren't just these tasks that you have to do. Like you mentioned, like we all hate writing this stuff. Sometimes it seems like it's a check the box kind of exercise. But I think what I've learned from you is that your objective should align to the broader company goals, and that you as an individual contributor or even as a manager, you should take some ownership and some leadership in making sure that you're contributing to those goals, and then making sure those goals are aligning to what the organization is trying to do.
Absolutely. I think it all starts again
Trying
with
to do.
with why. why are we doing what we're doing? Are we doing it because we're trying to make money? Are we doing it because we're trying to build a brand? Why are we making these choices?
Mm-hmm.
That should drive your what. So when you are setting your objectives, that's the what am I responsible for in order to help my team, my department, my company hit its goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a great way if your leadership has not set objectives or has not been clear about your goals, it's a way for you to bring some clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have already gotten your objectives signed off on and people are happy, yet here comes a totally different assignment, you can say, okay, if I have the capacity, I'm happy to add to this. If I don't, what do you want me to take off? Because again, one of the scariest words in corporate America is why. So it's the why am you asking me to do this if these are the objectives we've already set forth to be successful? Why are you asking me to move this and deprioritize that? And once you have that clarity, hopefully you're able to function a lot easier
Yeah.
in that space.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Those if they
If
don't try.
everyone has done their job the way they should, which never happens.
No.
So control what you can control, which is your objectives.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to get into two things I want to talk about. We're going to talk about one, like getting that buy-in and times where there's tension around your objectives. But then two, I want to talk about how we use our objectives to manage our own narratives when we get back from the break. We are back with Breana Brown Jones, marketing executive extraordinaire. I'm waiting for you, Breana, to get the CMO title. That's all I'm saying. I'm just gonna put that out there. I
Okay.
know. I know you. You may think, why would I do that? Because you're a badass, and you should. And then you can hire me.
There's always set that objective, Felicia. That's what you learned. That's what I'm talking about.
Listen, I had the best time working with you. Um, I
Why?
reminisce on it because you made space for me to be myself. And I think you did that for everybody on the team that, paid attention and would allow you to. Um, but you definitely um, gave a freedom to, in our one-on-ones for me to express myself in very, very authentic ways. And I've never had that. I never had the safe space that you created in companies. I think we keep talking about psychological safety.
Mhm.
But the truth is companies aren't safe just in general.
No.
They're not, that's not what they're designed for. And so when you have a manager that does carve out space for you to be frustrated, for you to express your fear or express where you feel like you're not where you're failing, and then to have a safe space to receive like real honest feedback, which is a beautiful gift when you get it and you receive it. um then you can grow and you can learn, and that is something. And I always knew that you cared about the people even when the people got on your nerves, and I know there were times I got on your nerves because you would tell me something and it was like I didn't understand, and I didn't, and you have to tell me again and a couple more times, and then one day I woke up and was like, oh, that's what you meant.
And that's okay. But so to tie that into today's word, how did that space allow you to create your objectives?
I think because I knew what the real was, what was going on with the business, it allowed me to clarify and focus better and faster, so that
Mhm.
I was working on things or spending time or have my team spend time on things that actually matter to the business, that or seem like they might matter, you know. Um, and it helped me understand the culture I was working in. And so it helped me get points on the board that would actually mean something in the organization instead of just, you know, making up some shit and hoping for the best. So that was very helpful because you were very transparent with us about, what you knew, which is something I find a lot of managers are afraid to do. I think it's scary to pass information down, but then it's like, well, how do you expect people to know? Like, we can't read your mind. So how do you expect people to know what they should be working on when you haven't communicated what the organization wants or what the organization is thinking?
Well, I think that's another secret I'm going to share with everyone is a lot of managers out there don't know what the business needs. So they've been given their objectives. They think about who does what on their team, and then they are parsing it out that way, as opposed to really taking the time to think and say, okay, I know the organization has said, here's what we are working on. If you are the leader, your job is to interpret that and to say, okay, this is what this means. Here's how we can truly impact it. Because again, the CEO can't tell you how the marketing team should be executing on these things. Even if that CEO was a marketer, that CEO was probably a marketer 20 years ago, which means the tactics have changed, the whys have changed, the congregants used to be called target audience, they've changed. So all of that is a nice suggestion. Your manager's job is to help you set objectives that are really going to do two things. One, help the organization move the needle, because ultimately you are there to make money for the company.
Right.
And two, hopefully you set the objective such that it positions you to the point that the organization recognizes your talent, because hopefully you wouldn't have created objectives that did not put you in the best light.
Right. Have you seen somebody do that? I've never seen anybody do that.
Create objectives that didn't put them in the best light. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely I have. Because
Spill the
it's
tea.
well, it's because they did what they thought the organization wanted. So it's this is what the organization should want, or this is what I think the organization needs. The organization didn't ask you for that. And that's not your skill set. So we can have a conversation. But as you know, I, as a leader, like to offer suggestions. You make decisions. So I can tell you, here's where we need to do. Here are the objectives. Here's what I'm going to accomplish. Here's how I see you fitting in. How do you see you fitting in? You can tell me. I'm going to say, maybe pump your brakes. Think about that. That's not your strength. Or, hey, we can get you there. That should be a stretch objective, but not the one that you are tying your compensation to. But if you choose to make that decision because you either don't trust me or overthink your abilities, then let the chips fall where they may.
Okay, so see, this is what I love about you because when you have a manager like Breana, pay attention because it sounded very, I want to say sweet, sugary. It felt good, and I like sweets and sugar, so that's why it feels good to me. But the truth of what, let me interpret, because see, this is we're getting
Oh, are you going to speak
professional.
Brianna for
Uh-huh.
everybody?
This is
Okay.
professional, Brianna. What she says was, fuck around and find out. Like, I'm telling you what you should do, and I know what I know, and you should trust that. But if you don't, then fuck around and find out. And that's what's gonna happen to you. And then she'll come back and she'll be like, well, I did mention.
I
which
made
is
a suggestion.
which is I
You
done
made a
told you.
decision.
Right. But when Brianna's like E.F. Hutton. When she makes a suggestion, you should listen. That's all I'm saying. Because if you do what she tells you to do, you're gonna be well. You're gonna make money. Now, when you don't listen, though, I mean, good luck to you.
And unfortunately, this person who did not listen was removed from the company because that person had an idea of what they wanted things to
Yeah.
be, which we all have ideas of where we want to be and what things should be. It's easier to move that needle the higher you go. The
Yeah.
reality of it is, if you are entry level or middle manager, you barely get to affect your change, let alone the
Right.
organization's change. So why don't you, again, realize what that chessboard looks like and realize how to maximize your position.
Ding, 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 ding. Oh my God. Listen, nuggets drop. This is why I want you on the show because there's never a time where I don't talk to you that I don't learn something. Even if we talking and shooting the shit and talking about stupid shows on TV or what book you reading this week or what trip you went on and the shenanigans on that trip, I still learn something from you.
That is probably the biggest compliment you've ever given me, because I only interact with people who like to learn. Like, that is probably the hardest part about being in corporate for me, particularly as a senior leader, is I feel like people have stopped learning. People
Yes.
assume once they've gotten to these executive positions that it is only incumbent upon me to share. Again, you're a dinosaur at some point. If you've stopped learning, you've stopped becoming effective.
Yeah.
Like, I hate social media, which again, I am a reluctant, marketer. And so I was like, well, of course you must do social media. I don't even like doing my own personal social media, but I recognize that it is there. So I need to lean on my pipeline,
Right.
because I can tell you what my objectives are.
Right.
Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's who I'm trying to reach. And I need that person to say to me, oh, okay, here's the best way we can do it. And together we can create the best plan.
Yeah.
But if I'm out there trying to do things the way I did long, long time ago,
Right. Right. The
it's not going to
algorithms have
be the
changed.
algorithms have completely changed. Actually, when I started, there were no algorithms.
Right.
So, yeah.
Same, same friend. Listen, the greatest thing that I'm learning and doing this podcast. So doing this podcast is out of my comfort zone always. Doing this
Is it
podcast,
though?
well, it's a labor of love. So like getting on here and talking to you, no, that's the easiest part. Like once we have everything set up and I'm sitting down, I got this microphone, turned it all on, hit record, sure, that part comes easy. It's the now that we're done, now all the processes that are in place to get the podcast out, then the SEO for the podcast and the trying to gain awareness for the podcast and the advertising for the podcast on social media, and it's like a necessary evil. I hate it so much so somebody else does some of that stuff for me, right? Like like because I don't like it. I didn't grow up with it. It's not native to me. I don't like it. But I recognize I have to keep up or you get left and you innovate or die, right?
Absolutely. But
So
that shows that you're growing as a leader, because a leader would say, I have to do it all. Or a manager would say, I have to do it all myself. They would say, it's my project.
mhm.
And this is what I'm good at. And the reality is, as a leader, one of the best things you can do as a leader is be self aware. And you can
Yes.
say, this is what I like. This is what I'm good at. Here's where my areas of opportunities are. Let me find people who will flesh this out for me. Because it's funny, you say the talking is the easy part for you, and it's the other stuff that's the labor of love. It's the exact inverse for me. I could do the back end strategic planning. Here's our objectives. Here's what we're going to do. Here are the KPIs. Here's what we're managing, everything in place. And then get on this every day, like every time you record. And I would just be like, oh,
Stop hiding.
because I don't like to be in the spotlight. I much rather be the puppet master than the puppet.
You know what though? The puppet masters make the most money. When you
Oh,
think
the
about
puppet
it,
master is where all the power is.
yeah, because that's the whole thing with the writer's strike, right? Like the puppets got mad. The writers and actors got mad and was like, "Y'all need to break us off some more coinage," which they do. Don't get me wrong, but the producers, the executives, the studio heads, they're the puppet masters in that game. And so when I think about like who do I want to be, yeah, sure, this stuff comes easy to me, but I still want to be behind the scenes because that's who dictates what this turns out to be at the long run. And so as I'm like working to, my objectives for this show, as I'm working to, create a bigger platform, get more messaging out to help people, manage their day to day at work and in a way that keeps them psychologically safe, in a way that helps them understand the chessboard that they're playing and help them grow their career and get them to where they're trying to go. um I realize like those same tools I just have to translate for this world. That it's hard. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so hard. I feel like in corporate, like I know that game, right? Like I know, um, let's say I'm not meeting an objective. I know how to get ahead of that. So like this is that time of year where if I wasn't meeting my objectives, I would come to my manager and be like, "Hey, we've got a course, we got to pivot, we got to like," and then I'd go in and rewrite my objective.
That part. If you're smart,
Right.
absolutely.
I'd go in the system.
Always allow yourself a loophole. So
Yes.
actually, you're real smart when you wrote them. You don't have to rewrite them because you had a loophole.
Right. But I will say when I've written objectives in the past, I think I've been a little overly ambitious at times. So I had to learn like it's better to beat expectations than to meet expectations.
Oh, absolutely.
So I try to write my objectives in a way where my manager feels good about what I wrote, but I know it's something that I could just do easy. And then that way I come back when I did the little extra plus one thing and I say, oh, and then I exceeded by doing this. Do you do that when you write objectives? Or do you notice your people doing that when you've managed people? Like
The
what?
smart ones. Under promise and over deliver, like all day. And even as a manager, I know when you're under promising. Um, and if you are really under promising, then I'm going to push you.
Okay.
But I think it's the reality. You should have three types of goals. You should have the ones that you can easily attain. So again, that's got that one out the way. It's the realistic one that you're like, oh, okay, this is my 9 to 5. This is what I should be doing. This is how I am contributing to the overall team. And then there's the one that you're like, when you knock that out the park, people take notice.
Yes.
Now, the problem is you don't want to have too many of those because then you're setting yourself up for failure. You're also setting yourself up for that to become your new job. And unless you're talking about being promoted with a salary increase, what you've just done is invite the organization to add more to your plate for free.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing all the time, but be mindful and make sure that you are the one controlling it rather than the organization.
Right. Have you ever left the organization and they hired 2 or 3 people in your place?
Every time.
It's a damn shame.
Well, and I think I see that as a credit to me because there have been organizations where they didn't even need me. But when I came in, I grew it. I showed them how they should be thinking about marketing because the reality of it is people discount marketing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I leave, people are thinking less about marketing as graphics and more about, oh, how do we get this money? So I need somebody to do the strategy. Oh, but then I need somebody who can execute the strategy. And then I need someone who can analyze it. And very rarely do you have that all in one person,
Rarely.
particularly if you don't want to pay that person.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a shame. So, can you share an experience where there was a communication breakdown that led to an objective not being met and then how that could have been avoided? And it could be somebody that works for you, or it could be it might be a situation where you experienced when you were more junior. Because I can't see this happening to you now.
No, well, funny you should say that because it did. Not too long ago. It was I trusted leadership, and I count myself in leadership to set the right objectives.
Right.
And this is a case where I knew something was going off the rails and I should have stepped in a little bit more forcefully. But rather than doing that, I didn't want to rock the boat. Again, sometimes we say, I don't always want to be that person.
Right.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to trust the organization. I hadn't been there that long. I said, you know better than I do. So I trust that. And so I created the team's objectives based on what I thought the organization's objectives were. What I did not do was pivot. When I realized that the organization had set the wrong objectives, I should have reset the team's objectives, and I didn't. And what happened was we ended up spinning our wheels.
Right.
And it was an epic failure, in my opinion, because the organization didn't get what they needed, but my team didn't get what they needed either.
Right.
So if the organization hadn't gotten what they needed, but the team members had gotten it, I wouldn't have considered it an epic failure because the organization didn't do what it should have done to set
Right.
that tone, that precedent. But because the team was so busy spinning their wheels on other things, they didn't get what they needed either. And so that's where I failed as a leader. In that instance, I was a manager and not a leader. And I had to remain true and say, okay, I recognize my goal, who I am authentically is a leader. So when I see something wrong, I got to call it out, or I at least have to put things in play in the background to help us achieve that goal.
So just know, in that instance, you ran so that I could fly. Thank you.
You actually were not the person I was talking
No,
about.
no,
So
no, no, no.
apparently,
I know. I'm saying you learned that lesson.
oh,
You
yes.
know what I'm saying? So that I could not fly. We could learn from you, and we could not do that, and we can go forth and be great. That's what I was saying.
Always have a plan D.
Yes. And I learned that from you too. Have several. Listen, be ready. Here's the thing, and I want to pull out that we've been not hinting at per se, but it's coming up. And the idea that your objectives, they shouldn't just be about the company. They should also be developing you. They should be doing something for you. So like an example you just shared, you're like, for me, it was an epic failure because my team didn't get what they needed to get out of the objective. And so for the audience, I want them to know that it's very important when you are setting objectives that you're adding to your resume in the thing you're trying to accomplish. So for me, like, let's say whatever new company I go into, I want to have at least 3 or 4 or 5 direct reports. Like, I want to lead a team. That's something I haven't done yet. I haven't led a bigger team yet. And so I know you're looking at me crazy. Like, ma'am, why?
Why?
Ma'am,
Why?
have you not learned?
I make
But
suggestions, you make decisions.
right. Yes. But no, because I know where I'm trying to go is to lead, a media company.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have to lead people. And I still need to grow in that. I still need to learn in that and evolve and get better. And the only way to do it is to actually do it. Like, that's the only way to really learn. So when I know for me, the next role I have is, and it's going to be a people leader role. And then I'm going to have objectives around people leadership because I want to grow in that area in my career. And then also, I want to be able to put that on my resume as a skill and that I've, gathered and mastered. And so your objective should be always in the form of what's in it for you and the company.
Absolutely, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
So you have to think about, what do I want out of this? And again, thinking back when I was very early in my career, I wanted a really good paycheck and I wanted a title. And yeah, I wanted some responsibilities where I could grow, but I wanted them in tandem with my title and my high pay,
Yes.
right? And also, I didn't want to think about objectives. I wanted other people to think about the objectives for me. And I only wanted to think about objectives when it came time. When we got the HR email, hey, reviews are going to be done, make sure you get your objectives. It wasn't until I realized, to get the most out of my objectives, I really had to think about them. And very rarely did I want to think about them in that 2-week window. So I had to make notes and say, maybe in Q1, I want to make sure that I get this. And maybe it didn't make that year's objectives, but I had to edit it for the next year and say, what do I really want out of this position? What do I want out of my time here at this job? And yes, it can be something fluffy, like I want peace of mind. And yes, I want to create a safe space. But you also have to think about, okay, that's a purely personal objective. Put that in your personal
Mm-hmm.
objectives. Because again, I also have personal objectives and professional objectives, but I like to marry the two as much as possible. So if I say, I want to travel to, this particular, let's say I want to go to this new continent, then I say, okay, I know we have a team. I want to work closer with that team.
Right.
I want to learn with that team. That gives me, yes, the ability to go and understand that new environment, but I'm also learning leadership and I'm learning about the business through the different perspectives of that person. And a lot of times people, because your managers haven't put a ton of thought into it, they are very thankful that you are thinking above and beyond. And we recognize that there's some selfishness in those objectives. We actually appreciate it because, again, if I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is helping you, I can only help you if you allow yourself to be helped. And if you are being open and honest with
That's
what you need.
snap, snap, snap. Somebody give her a mega horn and
No,
just
please don't.
go
But I
for it.
will say, if you are working for and with people who you don't feel you can have open conversations with and safely tell them what you need, and I know it's easier said than done, but you need to find a new space
Yeah.
because they're not going to change. You telling them that they are an unsafe space is not going to make it safer.
No. Because I think even you can tell somebody they're unsafe, but how much of that is you and how much of that is them?
And again, you have to accept it. One of the things you and I talk about all the time, early on in my career, I probably was not ready from a self accountability standpoint to take some of the feedback that I got.
Right.
And it definitely set a tone. Now, as a leader, I can look back and a senior executive and I can say, oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
what they meant. Oh, I
Yeah.
was a bit of a nightmare. Oh, yeah, I would have hated me too. But but hopefully I have course corrected. Hopefully I have made up for it so that when I see a young Breana in the workplace now, I can be like, okay,
Yeah.
let me talk to you the way you need to hear it, because that feedback was not given the way I needed to receive it. So no, I was not open to getting it, but it also wasn't being given the way I needed to hear it. Whereas this is why I try to spend so much time with my team members. And to your point, I try to
Yes.
give people what they needed because you need this feedback,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you're only going to receive it if you know that I'm giving it to you because I'm trying to help you.
Yeah. And that is the crux of I try to tell people, and it's something you told me too, like trust no one, right? Like
I tell people you go to work like everyone,
everyone
trust no.
trust no, like everyone trust no one. But with that, you have to be able to separate your like or dislike from somebody from what they're actually telling you. And that's
Yes.
something when I was junior in my career, I wasn't quite able to do because it felt personal. It always felt
Mhm.
so personal. And a lot of the feedback I was getting was around my how and, uh, me being honest. Maybe, and I know there were times I didn't understand how to read a room. Like, read the room, Felicia. Be quiet. Um, so I get that now, but I didn't understand it then. And I thought it was always, this likability thing. Because I recognize I can be polarizing for people. But in growing in that and learning how to be more flexible in how I show up, that's where I realized, like, hey, sometimes this is some fair feedback. Even if I don't like this manager, or I don't feel like this manager has my best interest at heart, I have to step back and say, okay, but what are they? Is what they saying fair, or is just I don't hate this bitch? Like I had to
Fair.
I'd take a step back and be like, okay, so I could see where that part might be true. Now I don't like some of this other shit, but that I
Facts.
can work on.
And part of that is then again in the sense of setting objectives, having real conversations and not just when your manager wants to have them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this works for everyone, but for me, I like to catch people off their guard. So I'm gonna ask you. So what do you think I could do better? How do you think that went? So how is that tying into our objectives? So what would you do? How would you have done it differently? Because again, I think a lot of times people just say stuff or they
Mm-hmm.
say they follow their script and they're like, I've been told, because a lot of times again, my boss has told me that Felicia is out of control and I need to rein Felicia in. But because I'm scared of my boss, I haven't said, boss, well, what exactly are we reining in? And why are we reining it in? And I haven't done for clarity. So when I tell you this, it's just, I'm putting this on you.
Mm-hmm.
The scariest thing for me as a manager is when you say to me, well, tell me more. So rather than waiting for them to tell you what they are following their script, ask them. That's how you get your most authentic feedback. That's how you really understand how they feel about you because you've caught them in a casual moment.
Mm-hmm.
You're catching them over lunch or you're catching them over coffee. And hell no, you don't want to have lunch with that person. But you know what? It hits your personal objective of truly understanding where you fit in because it is in those conversations that you will learn how the organization really feels about you. You will find out that there was a meeting where they talked about talent and you weren't included. You'll hear about the activities that the star went on and you weren't even considered. You will learn about those because no one's going to tell you that in their one-on-one. It's
Mm-hmm.
where they felt comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So again, be you should always be on your guard because the rest of the company isn't.
Mm. Oh, ding, 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 ding. Listen, we're gonna take a quick break, but when we get back, we are going to continue this conversation about objectives and how to adjust your objectives based on feedback, and how often you think that teams should reassess their objectives and what things to be looking out for throughout the year so that you're not caught slipping, i.e., you don't meet your expectations when it's come time for your review. So we're going to talk all about that and find out Breana's most important thing when we get back from the break. All right, guys, we are back with Breana Brown Jones, marketing executive extraordinaire. My now friend, I get to call friend. She said we are friends. I was so excited that day. I think you heard me say, somebody say, "Oh, Breana, my old boss," and you were like, "Oh, I'm just your old boss. I'm not your friend." And I was like, "You want to be my friend?" Oh my goodness! And this is
You are
what I
so
did.
silly. So silly.
Listen, I so thank you for this conversation. I knew you'd be a great guest, and I knew you'd drop all kinds of gems for my audience, and that's what I love to do. I want people to be able to listen to what we're saying, think about it, and then fix that, Chris. I want people to listen to what we're saying, think about it, and then go make their action plans, for this next quarter. Because all of October, for most people, they're either in mid-year or they're in the end of year, according on how your fiscal falls. But most fiscals are either calendar or they end somewhere in the summer. So when October comes around, it's either you're getting ready, you're thinking about what mid-year looks like, or you're thinking about what end of year looks like.
Mhm.
And so now is the time for you to really look and evaluate, like, what you've been doing. Are you doing the right things? And like we were talking about feedback earlier. So when you think through how you manage your objectives, do you actively go seek feedback? Or like, what is your thought process, or how do you manage throughout the year to make sure that, because one thing I know about Breana Brown Jones is she's gonna hit her objectives. Okay, period. So how do you manage that process and then loop in feedback to that process?
I think about them all the time. So I don't just think about them in Q4. I
Mm.
don't just think about them when the letter from HR comes out that we have to do it. I actually put something on my calendar monthly. Recheck your objectives. Are your objectives still recheck the company's objectives? Because again, I've been at companies that have restructured, they've reorged, they've taken resources away. There have been times when we've added resources as well to
Right.
understand how those changes impact my objectives and should my objectives have changed. And if my objectives have changed, then I need to be proactive and have the conversation with my boss to
Mhm.
say, hey, CEO, here's how this change has impacted everything else. Here's what we need to change. And the time to do that is not at the end when everyone knows we're all scrambling because we're trying to CYA at this
Right.
point. The time to do it is when it's fresh in everybody's mind.
Right.
So the best advice that I would give someone is think about it if you aren't in a place where you think you want to think about it monthly or it doesn't make sense for you to think about it monthly, do it quarterly. At least once a quarter, you should be having a conversation. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you may consider it a formal conversation. Your manager may consider it informal. Again, I don't care, but have a real conversation about how is what I'm supposed to be doing? And is this still how you are judging what I've done?
Mm-hmm.
And the next part of that is when I kill all of these objectives, what happens? So what happens for the organization and what happens for me? Because again, and in that order, because as a manager, I do want you to understand how your work is impacting the company. So if you are just on that hamster wheel, just doing a job, then you're not interested in moving up. I need you to understand, again, the bigger board. So you want to move from a pawn to a rook to eventually a queen, then you got to understand how they're all moving together. So hopefully you've put that into your objectives, or you're at least putting that in the conversation about your objectives. But at the same time, you also have to think about, well, what am I getting out of this? So if I'm continuously hitting my objectives 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row, and I'm not being considered for a promotion, then trust and believe that is the organization's way of telling you something.
Yeah.
Does not matter if you have exceeded expectations on your performance reviews. You've blown all your objectives away. You've exceeded everything that was given to you, and the organization is still not rewarding you. That is the organization's way of telling you, we value your work, we do not value you.
Yeah. You are worker bee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have to do some self-search. So again, all of this is moot if you're not willing to look and reflect for yourself and say, oh, okay, the organization has told me this. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
I've received this feedback. What do I do with it? You're always in a state of, and that's why I said you got to learn. You got to
Mm-hmm.
learn who you are. You got to learn who your manager is. You got to learn what your organization is about. And you got to learn what the market is, because your company is not the only player in that market. So if
Mm-hmm.
you've killed it here, then you can kill it at the competitor as well.
You
And if
sure?
the competitor is willing to pay you and to reward you and to put you on your path, then you need to go talk to the competitor.
Yes. Remember, I tell my audience all the time, these companies are fuck boys. Treat them accordingly.
I mean, I am still surprised in 2023 how people, and usually it's older people, so I guess like our generation, where they are expecting things from companies that companies were not built to give them.
Yes.
You and I differ on that. Like, you still believe that there can be a safe space.
Well,
I
I
think
I believe I can build this particular company. I do not believe these other people can, because I think a lot of people build companies for all the quote unquote right business reasons. And I'm building a company for all the altruistic, not money making reasons. And fix that, Chris. Part of my purpose is to prove a theory that if I focus on solely, not solely, but if I focus like my 80% on making sure people have what they need, are whole, are seen, are treated in humanity, are taken care of financially, um, that they will contribute. And also, I provide clarity on the task at hand. So, the task at hand of the company is to make money, but the mission and purpose of the company is to drive humanity. And so, if I drive humanity within and we mirror that, I'm going to beat any market expectations. I'm going to beat revenue goals. I truly believe that if a lot of these companies, they make a lot of money, so they think, oh, we're doing good, we make a lot of money. I think they could make even more money if they actually treated people with humanity. I don't think you believe that.
No, I don't disagree. Do I think they could make more money? Yes. Do I think they want to make more money? No. I
No.
think the system is the way. You and I have had just recently had this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Is it the system makes the people, or the people make the system?
It's the
And
people that makes the system. And that's why I feel like, well, if I take ownership of a system, if I create my own system,
yeah,
i.e. my own machine of a company, then I can run it how I think. I can run it based on the vision I have in my spirit.
yes.
Just like, and listen, I'm about to talk about Tyler Perry, but understand, I don't like, if Tyler Perry called me and said, "Hey, Felicia, come work for me," I am. So let's be very clear.
Tyler, please call Felicia.
but but I have been critical of Tyler Perry's work. I've been critical of some of the things he said recently. But I realized, hey, he created a system. He created a system for himself. It's very profitable. Um, he knows his audience. And he has hired lots and lots of diverse people. Some people would not have jobs if it were not for Tyler Perry. You cannot deny that, point blank, period. The man has done a lot and has created a lot and has created an own economy in Atlanta, for people who, if they came out to Hollywood, wouldn't have a chance, wouldn't even be looked at or considered. So, um and for as critical as some of us can be of the content that he creates, his audience loves it. And he's created jobs, and people who've worked for him have said great things about him, although there's been some people who've worked for him who've said not so great things about it, right? Like, I think that's par for the course. But I am going to try to, I mean, Tyler Perry did it. You can say, I guess, Puff Daddy has done it. I mean, hell, even Beyonce with Parkwood. And I hear she paid people real good. So, there's ways for us to create places where like-minded people can come together, do dope shit, make a lot of money. And I believe I can create another space for us in that.
And I love that. I love that for you. No, I do. I truly do. I absolutely love that for you. I think I've been in corporate America long, not that I've become jaded, because the reality is I have a love-hate relationship with corporate America.
Yeah.
I step away every so often and I say, oh, I need a break. And then my family says, please go back, because you are running our family like you are running your teams. So like, my family knows we do performance reviews.
Right.
I had my daughter sign a contract. Some people have allowances. My baby had a contract, but she also gets paid with a bonus structure for final exams. So
Get it.
I feel like it's fair. But they are like, no, you need to go back to work, because this ain't corporate America. But I think at my big age, I used to say I wanted to work for a company that was visible. again, that goes back to, particularly in marketing, there's something to, I want to see my products out there. I
Right.
want to see the commercials. I fall into the sexy side of marketing
Right.
just like everybody else does. At this point, I have a set of values, and here are my non-negotiables. And do I think, here's the thing, do I watch Tyler Perry movies? No, I'm not his audience. I'm not
Right.
his congregation. But I appreciate what he has done. And so while I don't necessarily care for the tactics that have come out, I do absolutely value the why behind it. And I can get behind a why, and we can disagree on the how it's going to come to fruition. And then again, my objectives are to learn from you and to maybe show you a different way of thinking as well, and maybe we can come together and find some happy medium, or we don't.
Right.
But at least, it's the, I know why.
Right.
I can't work for an organization now where you're not aligned to my values. It
Ooh.
doesn't matter how much you are paying me. It doesn't matter what that title is. If the things that I hold true and what
Mm-hmm.
I know will allow me to perform at my best, if those things aren't there, then I'm just not going to be successful. So we're setting ourselves up for failure.
I love that you said that. I feel like I was going to ask you what's the most important thing, but I feel like that is the most important thing in guiding your career, right?
Mhm.
Is the setting the objectives of for yourself and saying these are my values, and when I'm looking for an opportunity, the company has to align to that. My value is compensation.
And again, ain't nothing wrong with that. To be clear, I am a capitalist, so I do want to be paid. And I know words mean things. You
Yeah.
you also frequently hear me say that. So the term values, it still doesn't give me the warm fuzzies when I hear it, because it's like, oh, you want to be mushy and feel good and that. No, when I say values, I'm thinking about, like, for instance, my number one is intellectualism. I can't work for an organization where people don't think.
Say that.
I'm not going to be comfortable in an organization where people are like, we just tell you what to do.
Right.
If people are not encouraged to think, explore, expand, then that's not the company for me. So that is a value for me. Flexibility and adaptability. Diversity. And I know people, no, everyone does diversity. Yeah, absolutely.
No.
But for me, it is diversity of thought,
Mm-hmm.
because some of the best and worst advice I ever got was very early in my career. I'm an introvert. I am very much the, let me hear it, let me process it. And that is not how in this organization leaders were thought of. It was, if could you speak the loudest, could you speak first, could you take charge, talk off the cuff, think out loud. I don't do that.
Right.
And someone pulled me aside. And this goes back to our earlier conversation. And they said, don't know if you're gonna cut it here. And I'm like, it's been 3 weeks. What are you talking
Damn.
about? And they're like, well, you're not engaged. And I said, I'm absolutely engaged. I can recount everything that we've said in these meetings. Yeah, but you're not speaking. And I was like, well, everyone is just repeating the same stuff in this meeting. Like, no one is adding anything new. Why do I want to be the fourth person to make the same comment? Because that's the way people are gauging it here. And so the advice was, because I said, I'm an introvert. This is how I process it. They said, look, you want to be successful here, you better learn how to play an extrovert at work. And I say that is both the best and the worst advice I've ever gotten. It was
Mm-hmm.
the best because I realized I assumed I could be comfortable at work, and I should not have made that assumption.
Mm.
I should have understood what it took to be successful there. And I should have said, either it wasn't going to work, I'm going to be who I am, or I'm going to have to figure this out. But it was also the best because it did force me to jump out of my comfort zone. And yes, I'm still very much an introvert to my heart. Like, every day I decompress. Um, but it made me a better person, because, and definitely a better leader, because I now look to others and I have to manage them because I don't feel like I was managed. I also want to say that that was 20 plus years ago, because if you told somebody that today, they would cancel you. These new
Yeah.
kids do not want to hear that.
They will definitely send you to HR and say, "You're not being inclusive of my work style."
Exactly. Exactly.
Although I don't feel like I don't know if that's for everybody. I don't know. I'll tell you why. So I feel like, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble for this. I don't even care anymore. Like, I feel like for white women in particular, white women can go and they can say, you need to adapt to my work style and how I show up and blah blah blah. I don't know if black women are able to do that, or any women of color are really able to do that now. Like, I feel like it will be spun on us in a way. Like, I still don't feel like you could go and just say like, I'm introverted, and what that means is I'm an internal processor, and so what you'll see from me is this. I mean, some people might respect that, but I think in particular organizations where the expectation is you're on and you talk off the cuff, or how do they say, you have to be good at extemporaneous speaking here. You need to be able to think quickly on your feet here, and basically just run your mouth and blow smoke. um I think in those types of organizations, I still don't think there's an allowance made for us, and maybe I'm wrong.
I'm gonna say something real controversial here. So ooh, this is going potential. This will be one of those nuggets, and I may want you to take this out. Um, I agree with you. I think it is difficult for women of color to command that. The hardest person for that to happen with, though, is a white man, because I feel like they are expected to be
Mm,
that alpha. They are expected to be that person setting the tone. So I have actually worked for a director, one of the best directors I worked for in terms of his intelligence.
mm,
He was terrible because he was an introvert. And
mm-hmm.
they walked all over this man. And he, we worked well together because I could be his angry interpreter. So so I could say the stuff that he wanted to say because someone had told me, you need to learn how to be an extrovert. So I could say and I could pipe up. And, thankfully, he knew he wasn't long for the organization, but I could see now how that could have put me at odds with him.
Yeah.
But I think we all have expectations. And I think our job is to blow through those expectations in a way that others are willing to accept how we blow through them.
Right. Yeah. And not put, I think you really stifle people. And I tell people all the time, the introverts are the smartest ones because they're the ones that's paying the most attention. Like all those extroverts out here running your mouth, me included. Sometimes you ain't paying attention because you're so busy running your mouth. The extroverts are watching everything. They're analyzing everything. They're looking at everything. They're calculating all the angles. That's what I find that's their superpower. And when
Your
you do,
introverts are the most diabolical people in the company. If you really
absolutely.
want to know what is going on, you go find the introvert. The leaders who are the introverts are the most dangerous ones because they have studied you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds real crazy. And every time I tell you I study people, like I feel like I belong on one of those stalker shows. But it is what allows me to be as good as I am is because I treat my workplace just like I treat the market. So just like as a marketer, I have to analyze the outside market, I also have to market myself and my team. So I have to analyze the internal market that is the company. And so I have to make sure, what are the trends? What's shifting? What are the buzzwords? Who's saying what? And if you aren't, as a person, as a leader, thinking through that, and you so busy just trying to talk through it and go, go, go as that extrovert, you're going to miss something key.
Oh my God. Dropping gems. Listen, that is so important. That's what I try to work with all my clients on is like, let's understand the organization. Like, not only do you need to understand how the business works, how the business makes money, even if you're in PR or HR or some type of operations where you're just focused on making the widget for the company, you need to understand how do they sell it, who they sell it to, how does that work? Is what you're making over here in operations, is that what the customers really want? And are you getting all that information? Do you see the big picture? Like, that's so freaking important because that helps you build out your plan on how you're going to make those moves from pawn to queen, right? Like,
There are three questions that everybody needs to be able to answer, particularly coming back to the topic of objectives. One, what's the company? What are our objectives? What are we really trying to do in this time frame? So if it's this fiscal year, it's this calendar year, it's this quarter, what are we trying to do?
mhm,
How are we going to do that? And don't tell me like real fluffy language, like how we're going, like, no, real talk. Like, how are we going to do it? So, are you adding people? Are you giving us more money? Are we acquiring something? And if like I don't understand how, if I don't understand how, then that means you probably don't understand how, which means
right.
this isn't real. So let's move on to the next objective. And then the third question is, how is what you are working on directly impacting that objective? Because if you, as a cog in the machine, cannot say, I am doing these three tasks, this allows us to drive engagement, which will then equal an additional $6 million in revenue. You need to be able to articulate that, one, as an internal person to advocate for yourself and the value that you bring. But again, also when you are thinking about making that next move, you got to put that on your resume,
Yep.
because your resume is now less about what you did, but why you did it and what was the impact on the organization. It ain't about how it impacted you. How
Mhm.
did you make that organization better than you found it?
Listen, on that note, Breana, thank you for being here today. Um,
No, thank you for having me. This is the most fun I've had. And I have to say, I am so proud of you.
oh,
No, really, you gave me my flowers. I'm gonna give you yours. Like, this is what you were supposed to be doing. You absolutely were a gem to work with in corporate, but that's not where you belong. You you belong here. You belong in a help environment. You have a story to share, and you have a way of communicating with people about your story and aligning to theirs to help bring them along. And there needs to be more of you out there than there are of me. And so I thank you for what you are doing. I wish I had a podcast like Trill MBA when I
don't
was,
play.
no, really, like, I mean, when I was a younger
Oh, I thought you were
employee.
saying you want to be on a podcast. I was like, you want a podcast?
I mean, yeah, that's another story. Put a pin in it.
Right.
But no, had I had this when I was younger in my career, I think it absolutely would have been a resource to help me. So I hope your listeners really can appreciate the gem that they have.
Oh, thanks, Brianna, because you know every other week I be threatening to quit. Um,
Yes.
very
Me
similarly to
too.
very similar to when we worked together.
Me
Oh,
too.
I was always trying. I was like, Brianna, I think this is my last week here. But listen, we're gonna go from the show. So I'm gonna end the show, but we're gonna record a special clip from the Patreon because I want you to talk about how it was me working. Like, I want you to talk about
Oh,
me as an employee, but that's going to be especially for
okay.
the Patreon. So guys, we're going to wrap up now. So you know the drill. If you need some help or advice about a specific situation, then go to trillandba.com/coaching to schedule a 45-minute consultation with me to strategize and walk through your specific work situation. In addition, you can always email us at ask@trillandba.com with your questions or concerns. We're happy to connect you to people. We're happy to connect you to Breana if it makes sense. But listen, this woman is very busy. She is a very senior level
Don't
executive.
do that. Please. If you've got questions, please reach out.
Yes, but we will connect you. So again, that's trillandba.com/coaching to schedule a 45-minute consult with me, and ask@trillandba.com to submit your questions or concerns. Breana, how can the people connect with you though?
Best way is probably on LinkedIn. So I am there as Breana Brown Jones. Send me a message. I told you how I feel about social media, so I'm not there nearly as much as I should. So if I don't respond immediately, I absolutely will.
Awesome sauce. We will link Brianna's LinkedIn to our show notes. She is a resource. She is also in the market. So if you
Yes,
want the
I am.
best boss you could ever have working at your organization, and you know that your organization needs a brand guru, strategist, marketing strategist, executive, CMO, that level, okay, people, you definitely want to snap her up. But she won't be on this market long. I've seen it myself a couple times now. She thinks she's getting a break, but
And if you are not looking for a CMO, you are simply looking for someone to bounce an idea off of, or you are looking for a consultant, then we can talk as well.
that's right.
My
You have your
passion is
consultancy.
I do have a consultancy that Dewey 378, just, again, starting out, making it official. But it is important. It is important that we all have resources. So I had those people for me, and I want to be that person for others.
I love that. And this is why you're a real one. And I appreciate you. So, hey guys, until next week, keep it trill.